Good morning, everyone. Today I will talk about ecological succession, which is a very important topic in ecology. So, what is ecological succession? The natural gradual changes in the type of species that live in an area can be primary or secondary. It is a slow and gradual process. So, what are the main causes of successions? First is initial or initiation causes. These are climatic as well as biotic erosion, deposition, wind, fire, volcanic activity, etc. These are basically climatic factors. And the biotic factors include the various activities of living organisms, such as animal migrate from one place to another places. Then species or continuing causes, which is caused by the invasion of the organisms into the new habitat. And third is stabilizing causes. These are factors which stabilize a community in a particular area, and the climate of the area are the main chief causes of this stabilization. And this hypothesis has been proposed by Clements in 1916. So, what are the main types of ecological successions? First, on the basis of different aspects, it can be categorized into four different processes. First is primary succession, the process of creating a life in an area where no life previously existed. It's a barren area where no life previously existed, and in this area, the ecological succession started. And next is secondary succession, the process of restabilization that follow a disturbance in an area where life has formed an ecosystem. And third is autogenic succession. Its present environment is modified by the interaction of community as well as its reaction with the environment that present in the community is replaced by a new community. And finally, the allogenic succession, when the existing community is not replaced by its own activities by the influence of any external condition. So, on the basis of nutrition and the energy content, first autotrophic succession can be pointed out. First is it is a process in which early and complete dominance of autotrophic organisms like green plant takes place. Second is in this case, the inorganic environment is predominant and the energy flow is maintained indefinitely. And third point is organic content supported by energy flow gradually increases in this process. And in heterotrophic succession, in this case, heterotrophs like bacteria, actinomyces, then fungi and animals predominate. And organic environment is predominant, but the energy content decline progressively. The ecological succession mainly categorized into two parts. First is primary succession. In this series, the changes takes place when there is no soil present. As I told in the previous slides, for example, after a volcano or destruction of the coral reefs. And next is secondary succession. In this, the series of changes that takes place when there is soil presence. Means in secondary succession, the base is available. However, in primary succession, there is no base. Actually, it starts from the barren areas. And for example, after fire, hurricane, flood, destruction by man, or tornado. Then this is the pictorial depiction of two succession types. One is primary succession and another one is a secondary succession. The left side is the primary succession when the barren land of rock initially present and the autotrophs or the vegetation starts growing. And in the secondary succession, they get destructed by due to the natural calamities or by human made anthropogenic activities, and due to this the secondary succession started. So this is the example of primary succession where the lichen or mosses in first starts into the system of in the barren rock. Then this is the example, as I told, primary succession. This is the barren rock. In that, the first the development of an ecosystem in an area that has never has a community living within it and occurs by the process of primary succession. An example of an area in which the community has never lived before would be a new lava or rock from a volcano that makes a new island. This is the example of how ecological succession occurs. So first is bare rock. If you see from the left side of this picture, then lichen comes, mosses, herbs, weeds, grass, shrubs, then pine, and then finally oaks. So this is the left side is the primary stages, and finally if you see the right side, it is a climax community. So in secondary succession begins in a habitat where communities were entirely or partially destroyed by some kind of damaging event. So first comes the primary succession, then comes the secondary succession. So this is the cycle of life in secondary succession. First is disturbance, then grasses, shrubs, small trees, and then finally climax community. So which one do you think takes longer time? Answer is primary succession, because the rocks need to break down to make the soil before the new species will grow in that barren area. So what species comes first? The first comes the pioneer species. These are the first species to grow. They can differ depending upon the area. For example, in a forest, a pond, or a wetland, it are different, and it's primary or secondary succession, and is it primary or secondary succession. So first is primary succession comes. So what makes the difference between primary and secondary succession? The key is whether there is soil already present, or does the soil need to be made by the broken down of the rock. It determines it is primary succession or the secondary succession. So this is the again another pictorial depiction that how much time it takes to process this ecological succession. If you have seen, nearly 100 years it takes for a forest to become a climax community of oak trees. Then general process of succession. First is nudation. In this process, in which the barren area where no life exists is created by several physical processes like landslide, erosion, deposition, and other catastrophic events. First is topographic. The gravity of water, wind causes erosion of the soil. Then communities growing in this soil thus may disappear with the topographic factors. And second is biotic factors, the anthropogenic reasons for destruction of the forest, grassland, etc., or due to maybe industry or agriculture or maybe housing activities. Then second one is invasion. Invasion means the species comes from one ecosystem to another ecosystem. Then it is a migration. The air, water, or even bird excreta may bring seeds, spores, and propagates in a barren area. Then is esesis. After reaching the area, the species established itself in the area as a result of adaptation with the prevailing environmental condition. And third one is aggregation. As a result of reproduction, number of species increases and they become close to each other to form aggregates by a process known as aggregation. And next comes the competition and co-action. Intra or interspecific competition for the food and space. An individual of species interact with other life forms in a various way, and this is known as co-action, meaning the action of different animals in between intra or interspecific. The reaction, the mechanism by which the living organism modify the environment is known as reaction. So that how they react with the environment or how they react with the living organisms comes under this category. And then is stabilization. After a series of succession, the terminal community becomes more or less stabilized after a long period of time, and it can maintain itself in equilibrium with the climate of the area. And the final stage is known as, or the final community is known as the climax community or climax stage. For example, a pioneer species, first species to grow like mosses. Then lichens do not need the soil to survive. They can survive in drought, extreme heat, cold, and other harsh conditions and start the soil building process. So lichen produces a weak acid that eats away the rock and break it down into the soil, and which makes the perfect environment for the plants. Then comes the pioneer species. First, algae, many types are also called as pioneer species. Then second stage is shrubs, and third stage is the bushes, and the fourth stage is the usually small trees, and final or climax trees are the bigger trees. Okay. So this is a pond ecosystem, primary or secondary succession. So first, if you see the pond A having the animals into it, and pond B very less animals. So put the picture in order. If you put the picture in order of succession gradually, it starts from the B when there is very limited number of animals and no such vegetations were there. Then first B, then C, then A, and then finally D. So to review the two succession process: primary succession, nothing present, no soil, bacteria or organism. Secondary succession, something was there and it is not anymore due to the destruction or natural calamity. So marine ecosystem and succession. Marine ecosystem include ocean, marshes, swamps, lakes, or the freshwater lakes or the chilka lakes like estuarine lakes. Then freshwater ponds also comes under the aquatic ecosystem, streams, wetland, etc. Marine succession happens when a lake, pond, stream becomes land or forest. It follows the following process: sediment, dead organisms settle down at the bottom, displacement of the water means less oxygen for the organism to in the water. Then organisms start to die out and sedimentation process takes place. Why does ecological succession occur? Because it is a process of life for plants, soils and other living organisms. Because the organisms alter soil structure, chemistry and microclimate, the species composition of ecological communities constantly changes over time. The succession will continue until the environment reaches its final state, that means climax community. The climax community is a mature, stable community, or this is the final community, you can say. So these are the examples of climax communities. A summary of changes that occur during the succession: first come the pioneer species to colonize in a barren area, then changes its physical environment like light, moisture. Then new species plants displace the existing plants because their seedlings are better able to become established in a changed environment. Then newly arriving species after physical condition often in the way that enables other species to become established. The animal come with or after the plant they need to survive. Eventually, a climax community that is more or less stable will become established and have the ability to reproduce itself. The disturbance will start the process of succession again. So there are three types of succession theories. One is monoclimax theory, polyclimax theory, and climax pattern hypothesis. So what are the threats to the succession? The grasses that move as a pioneer species are often thought as a weeds. So what we do in agricultural field, if we see the other weedy plants, we just uprooted it, but it is not desirable basically from ecological perspective, because these plants are generally making the pathway for the future plants. Okay, the subsequent growth of shrubs are considered undesirable or bushes. Without these intermediate stages, the disturbed habitat cannot return to the natural forest. The fragility and the stability of the ecological community depends upon several factors. For example, in temperate forests, if the shrubs are not allowed to grow, insect species begin to feed on young trees instead. So this had happened in many places where trees are replanted after an area is clear cut. Large quantities of pesticides are then brought in, polluting the soil, water, and altering the natural ecosystem even further. So that's why what I told earlier, in agricultural field, generally we destroy these weedy plants. However, these weedy plants may be food for the insects or other animals. So what they do, these animals when they don't get food for like weedy trees, they start to eat your crops. So how do human affect the ecological succession? We are clearing our land for gardens and preparing for the soil or for planting. The representative of major external event that gradually restructure and disrupt the previously stabilized ecosystem. So what we do, which crop or which plants we like or which is economically important, we start to preserving or protecting that plants, and we are destroying the bushes, which is also a part of ecosystem. So does ecological succession ever stop? If you say to me, it is not actually. We must recognize that any ecosystem, no matter how inherently stable or persistent, could be subject to massive external disruption forces due to the fire or natural calamities that would restart and re-trigger the successional process again. So as long as these random and potentially catastrophic events are possible in mankind, so it is not absolutely accurate to say that succession has stopped. Thank you very much for your kind attention and listening. Thank you.